The library in Eisr had long been abandoned. When the village was rebuilt, the books from the library remained in a chest, ignored and unloved, the village pursuing fishing and trade. Young people followed in their parents' footsteps or were apprenticed to others in the village. But some remembered the old librarian and the stories he told. One woman particularly. She retrieved the chest of books from where they were stored and made them her own. She shared them with others who were interested, renewed her lessons, expanded her knowledge, and determined to make the library live again. The council refused to give up land for a library. Eisr was confined within a wall to keep at bay the creatures that shuffled across the sands at night or came lurching from the tall grass of the savannah. There was no space, or so they said, for a building that was of no use to anyone who wanted to work hard for the good of the village. It was a waste of land and a waste of her time. Be useful, they said, put the books away. When she refused, they threatened to take the books and throw them from the docks, or to give them to one of the many traders who now visited Eisr to trade with the villagers and with each other. And so she made a plan. The woman and her friends, and indeed now her students, would take the books and go further into the desert. Not far, but just enough to be beyond the council and the other villages. And in the desert they would build a school. They would call it Daraa, which meant the bright place. It began with a simple building, a dormitory with a dining room, a classroom annex, and an office for their leader. They started to call her Librarian. Initially she resisted, but then realised that that was what she had become. She kept the books and taught the others how to care for them, how to glean knowledge from them, encouraged research and critical thinking. Check your facts, know your sources. Learn how to argue and how to accept challenges to your ideas. So she was the librarian. The library town of Varus across the sands heard of the little school and sent scholars and books, second copies, new editions. They were generous with their time as well, giving lectures and joining debates. So the chest of books became 2 chests, and then 4, and a small book depository was built. Word of the school spread further and more students came. Soon the dormitory wasn't enough, so the new arrivals built Beehive Houses on the hill above the depository. Students graduated but didn't leave. They built their own homes for their families, for their children, and still the collection of books and scrolls grew. And it was decided that the community needed a library building. The librarian remembered fondly the little library that had been in Eisr in her youth, that had survived only as long as its librarian had survived, and she envisaged something that would outlive her and all the others. So the plans were made for a great library that could become a centre for learning, a haven for students and knowledge seekers. Some people came across from Eisr to help build the library, and they built houses between the school and the fishing village. Masons and carpenters came from further afield and joined their fellow builders, forming a little community within the community. As the library rose slowly from the sand, traders began to make side trips. They'd come to Eisr and trade in the marketplace, then walk across to Daraa and set up to trade there. One built a trading post, then another built a shop with a house above. Another did the same. Soon there was a commercial area with a merchants' guild, and the traders would come to Daraa first and then go to Eisr. The library was finally finished, and the school expanded as more people came. Daraa scholars travelled to Varis, bringing copies of new texts that they had authored, and Varis scholars came to Daraa, continuing the vibrant exchange of knowledge. The children of the Daraans joined the school, or sought out their grandparents in Eisr, or travelled further seeking the life they wanted to embrace, free to make their own choices. All seemed right in the little town of the desert school, but all things change. One morning, the librarian didn't rise from her bed in the dormitory. A physician was called, but he could throw no light on her condition. By the late afternoon, she was dead, and Daraa wept for her passing. A senior under-librarian stepped forward to take charge of running the library and school, and the others were grateful for his leadership in this time of crisis. He asked that a new office and house be built for him, befitting his new status, and he no longer ate with the others in the communal dining room. Under-librarians began to ask for their own offices and houses, and Daraa expanded. The role of librarian expanded also, encompassing not just the library, but also the town beyond the library walls. But the town was no longer a town only of scholars and students. The Merchants' Guild did not want to be ruled from the library and insisted that as Daraa was growing, there should be a council or some other form of local government. The librarian resisted, insisting that he, and he alone, was best placed to guide Daraans in their daily life. But if you teach a people to think for themselves, to reason and question, it's hard to impose your will upon them. The under-librarians met together, and together they took the librarian from his office and told him his time was over. He could stay or he could leave, but he could not continue as librarian. He chose to leave, going up into a cave in the mountain, his heart bitter. Later, others entered the cave, but found only a strange gateway and silence. A meeting was called in the square in front of the Merchants' Guild to determine the future of the town. Scholars, merchants, tradespeople all came forward to form a governing body together, and administrative chambers were planned and then built, and peace returned to Daraa. While the dry desert air was kind to the books, the growing population of Daraa needed water, but the nearby river was brackish. So a great reservoir was constructed, and around it a fine garden for all to enjoy. The garden became a popular place for visitors to the library or to the market to meet and to rest. And Daraa continued to expand. Soon it came up against the river that bordered Eisr. A bridge was built, and then another, and the people of the two towns were reunited at last. The great library and school on one side, the docks and fishery on the other. And so it became known as Eisr al Daraa, the bright place by the sea.